Hi, I'm Jimmy, and this is a video documenting the making of a niche historical indie puzzle game. If you enjoy watching the creation of a video game about obscure historical references wrapped in puzzles and mystery, then perhaps this is the place for you. Our game is ultimately a puzzle game, and so it's only fitting that at some point we perhaps mention our approach to actually designing some of the puzzles in the puzzle game. Then, when you zip off to build your own boarding school related befuddlements, you too will be equipped with the knowledge to do the opposite of everything we do and likely make something much better. To set the scene, we already have a narrative storyline we must comply with. Now, we want a variety of unique and perplexing puzzles to accompany our story and give our game true purpose. In a perfect world, we would just sit down in the middle of an empty room, think really hard, and poop out a perfect, succulent puzzle nugget to implement into our game. Unfortunately, I am not that smart, and so the design process usually ends up being significantly more involved. Instead, my first step is to find myself a puzzle seed. This seed is my jumping off point. It could just be an object, or a concept, or a tiny narrative plot that I yearn to explore. For instance, here is this goofy chap throwing a paper plane across the classroom. This paper plane could be my puzzle seed. I let my mind wander. Ooh, perhaps the boys have thrown a bunch of these paper planes all about the school grounds, and players must somehow find and deduce who hurled each one. Finding the seed is one of my favourite parts of designing a puzzle. It gives a real feeling of creative freedom. I like to rove and frolic within the 3D scene, trying to invent creative ways to use many of the various mundane objects that already exist in the world. Interesting. Look at these notice board pins that are holding up all of these posters. Perhaps those pins could be arranged into a variety of intriguing patterns. The mind truly begins to boggle. As well as just aimlessly looking at the fascinating paraphernalia within the school property, we also keep a short list of alluring ideas that might pop into our heads while working on unrelated parts of the game. I fell into a fascinating rabbit hole when modelling this 1940s era delivery automobile, where I learned all about the precursor to car indicators, the trafficator. These little signals protruded from the body of a vehicle and were mechanically operated using a complicated series of cables and pulleys, allowing the driver to notify other road users of their intent to perform high-octane maneuvers, such as turning left or turning right. But anyway, while it hasn't happened yet, trafficators are sitting patiently on our cool ideas list, waiting to be converted from historical peculiarity to puzzling paradox. Now we have obtained a precious puzzle seed. The next step involves amateur game botany to nurture its growth from shriveled sapling to a non-deciduous monkey puzzle mammoth. First, we try to tease out some logical forms of deduction that might be engaging for a player to uncover. Which boy threw their paper plane the furthest? How many potatoes could a chap fit into his tuck box? If a trafficator was indeed stolen, in Section 3 of the 1930s Road Traffic Act, what are the relevant traffic violations broken by subsequent operation of the vehicle? All of this is potentially great puzzling content indeed to be further constructed upon. We can now write some crude text into the gameplay diary, noodle around with which word would work best for having the player fill in. Perhaps it's a character's name being missing, and the puzzle requires some logical deduction as to whom. Or perhaps some further environmental clues within the world gives away more cryptic messaging that the players can decode. We try, wherever possible, to avoid trivial data entry. Providing a character's name and then immediately asking for it is acceptable only as introductory tutorialization methods. We strived to produce more stimulating means of locating puzzle information as the player progresses through the game. Next, let's add those associated puzzle items into the world that a player is to use as clues. It could involve sketching up a new poster for the classroom wall, or scattering paper aeroplanes across the domicile. Better still is finding satisfying ways to cement clues into the world in a way that feels organic and uncontrived, such as this fellow's destruction of a fine literary sonnet to manufacture ammunition, pressing players to solve this poetic stumper with information amiss. We must also take care not to step upon our own toes by placing misleading clues that would compromise adjacent puzzles, or completely bungle the narrative sequencing by prematurely giving away pertinent information. Accidental bungling of the story appears to be an unfortunate speciality of mine. Puzzle text can now be further refined. The diary text may need to include hints towards where its associated clues are located. This becomes increasingly significant later in the game, as more rooms are unlocked and the player's solution search space becomes untenably large. We may also wish to research a more stimulating, period-appropriate vernacular to aid in its placement within the diary, or to make a text slightly more obscure and let players attempt to interpret its meaning. Let us not assume now that the sprouting of our puzzle, from sapling to juvenile, has not incited the growth of some parasitic blights. By performing a series of highly scientific third-party evaluations, we can ensure at least a medium quality of puzzling woodiness has been procured. Basically, let's get some people to test our new puzzle. First in the testing firing line is Onionhead comrade Rich, a test subject who arrives adorned with an assortment of pros and cons. As he is cramped alongside myself in a virtual office room, he is obliged to test all puzzles immediately. Additionally, he is able to speedily pull down changes to the project, allowing me to make on-the-fly tweaks to a puzzle as he attempts to solve it, thereby permitting rapid, iterative improvement of poor puzzle design at the meager cost of his sanity. Unfortunately, this test subject offers sparse additional value. His brain, already saturated with so much related context regarding the game's characters and environments, he can give no real implication of a puzzle's difficulty. The next viable test subjects are our significant others and family members. This hodgepodge of eclectic individuals can be easily bribed into unpaid labor and provide additional benefits. They allow us to test and make sure there are no overly complicated logical leaps, and that we have sufficient hints in the diary to allow them to naturally find clues in the world. This workforce can be closely monitored and can be further exploited by forcing them to play the same puzzle multiple times, and upon any failure to solve said problem, are given no hints and told to wait for changes to be implemented. Our final set of valuable test subjects are our volunteer external playtesters. Friends, former colleagues, and potential publishers, this bamboozled bunch provides us with solid feedback of what a real player is likely to experience. Stumbling and grazing themselves on all the sharp corners of our various puzzles, they provide us with non-real-time video footage of their suffering, allowing us to further refine and polish. Our testers may feel minor discomfort, but their anguish is earnestly appreciated. And that is that. We have designed, tested, and iterated on our idea. We have botanized our puzzle seeds into gnarled and weather-beaten timber. Now, rinse and repeat, one too many times, and just maybe we have built ourselves a puzzle game. Please do join us again next time for some more thrilling content covering the creation of our niche historical detective mystery game.